All right. So the title of our Lineage Address today has to do with Dharma Intending. How many of you have already heard the name Dharma? Raise your hands, I can see. And karma, probably you've seen and heard and tried to grow out of, yeah? So our lineage has a little bit of a different view than more the Eastern tantric approach, but it's all lineages that leads towards the light, and so it's pretty much, there's a similarity even though our language is a little bit different. We come from what we call a twisted hair lineage, and we're men and women in the Americas, New Zealand and Australia learned from different shamans and so on, and gathered knowledge through different tribes and came together in what they call the rattlesnake school. So the Red Lodge program comes out of the rattlesnake school, which is a twisted hair school for awakening. You don't have the rattlesnake here in Australia, I believe, correct? No. But the rattlesnake has this tail that is just magnificent. It goes like whenever you come close to it, and it's like an awakener. And so you stop right in your tracks and you go, okay, brother snake, I will back up a little bit. Please just go on your merry road and we will be friends. So the rattlesnake is the awakener that sheds its skin, and that's very much what our tradition is about. Shedding our skin, waking up to the next level of consciousness, and then shed our skin again, and then keep going until we have reached the desired level that we desire. Yeah? So if you look, can you see that? Yes? Okay, this is steps of Dharma Intending. There's actually 10 steps of Dharma Intending. The 7, 8, 9, and 10th step has words in it, and you know, the title of the step is like 3 or 4 sentences. And the words that are contained in those steps you have to study many years in the path to kind of understand very well. So I'm going to go through 1 through 6, which is already plenty. And we're going to discuss a little bit karma and dharma. And then we're going to give you a little handout that you can have and take with you to really see and ask yourself, how could you best learn and choose and love yourself enough to let go of patterns of suffering, patterns where you're losing energy, and step into patterns and ways of being where you're gaining consciousness, gaining self-love, gaining awareness. So that's what this whole experience tonight is about. Let's see. We are the steps of Dharma has to do with stepping into reincarnation cycles where we are productive in our patterns and can actually let go and release the ways in which we are learning through pain. So karma is not a bad thing. Karma is about learning from our past, learning all of the things that have pained us, that have made us shut down, that has made us become an armored human being that only dare to come out with our tenderness and honesty in certain arenas. And karma is all about learning and healing from the past. Karma is also about paying back indebtedness, where we have done things, or we have had behaviors or ways of being that has literally harmed other human beings, or has harmed the earth, or has put us out of balance and harmony with the plants and the animal kingdoms and the humans. So anything that we have done in our different reincarnation cycles that has been really our journey of learning and our journey of figuring out what does it mean to be a human being, and how do I transform the pain that I'm carrying and the suffering that I'm carrying and the suffering and pain that our parents were carrying and the belief systems that were separated from creation but that we still live by, how do I transform that? And previously, long time ago, all the way up until this time here in the last 10 years, there was not very many people that were able to complete their karma. So it was the Buddha and the Jesus or the wise man on top of the mountain in the Himalayas that was known by the whole community around them to be a really, really wise person that had somehow gained some neutrality and gained some sense of presence and were able to be a guide for other human beings. And so there was the rare odd one that had gone through self-growth for years and years and years and years and been able to attain this state of completing the karma, completing the suffering, and opening to the Dharma. Am I making sense? The thing that is so incredibly special, and part of why I wanted to talk about this tonight, what's so incredibly special about the day that we live in, this age right now, is that, for example, our teacher Thunder Strikes said like several years ago that 40% of humanity is in Dharma. So there's like a morphogenetic field. There's this momentum of closing the karma book because we've had enough reincarnations and enough lifetimes and enough learning that we're ready to see enough already. I'm ready to forgive. I'm ready to speak what needs to be spoken. I'm ready to give forgiveness, ask for forgiveness, and I'm ready to move on. And so many years ago, or like at least 3-4 years ago, he said 40%. I think it's probably at least 50%, because this is like a momentum that is really, really carrying on. And a lot of the children that are born, and a lot of the children on Grandmother Earth now, are born in Dharma. So because it's not just the odd one here and there, but that is stepping into Dharma, but it's literally every Jane and Joe and neighbors and people that are on a spiritual path and people that are not on a spiritual path that are closing their karma book. It's incredibly special, and that is part of the whole prophecies of the 2012 that I'm sure several of you have heard about. Have you heard about the 2012 and the whole ending of the Mayan calendar and the transformation that we're going to go through as human beings? That what's happening right now is part of that whole momentum that is required to open the golden gates to the next world that we are stepping into as humanity. And that is a world with balance between the masculine and feminine, healing and peace between the sexes, and not referencing ourselves to the past and being so busy about trying to determine the future all the time, but actually being comfortable in presence. And that's what that world of the 2012 is offering us, and that world we are stepping into next year. So we're going to go through a couple of steps here of closing the karma book, opening the Dharma book, and so on. And I'm going to speak about some rules of Dharma. And I can open up for questions if you want, because there's several rules of Dharma. And part of what our teacher Thunder Strikes speaks of is that the lifetime that you are closing your karma book and opening your Dharma book in, the very, very important part in that lifetime is to understand how to live in Dharma, because the rules are incredibly different than the rules of living in karma. So I want to talk about those rules and see if we can grasp onto them, because most of you are probably in Dharma. If 40%, 50% of humanity is in Dharma, most of you are probably in Dharma, yeah? So let's go with that. Is it clear? Yeah? Okay, good. So the first step is closing the karma book. Closing the karma book has to do with stepping out of that energetic where we are constantly concerned about other people's perceptions of us, and where we will mold our behavior and be completely busy with looking outside of ourselves in order to see how we're doing. Looking outside of ourselves in order to see whether we're going to feel okay with who we are and what we're choosing to say and do and be or not. So that whole energetic of looking outside of ourselves is part of what a person who is about to close their karma book is stopping to do. And instead starting to reference, who am I? Why did the things happen to me that happened to me in my lifetime? Why did I choose my parents? How am I a co-creator in my reality in this reincarnation? I chose to be born in a physical body again. I chose to continue my evolution as a soul. And so how can I end the suffering? So when you close your karmic book, you're actually ending the patterns of suffering across the soul space, across all lifetimes. So it's actually a very, very big perspective that we're having here, that we can take and make very personal, because we are sitting in these chairs here today and we are a representation of our soul. But it's a really, really big picture. So when we close our karmic book, we actually have completed and paid back the indebtedness that we have gathered and created across our lifetimes with mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, lovers. You can imagine, just looking at your own lifetime right now and all of the different people that you have had other than harmonic experiences with. All of those things have actually been completed on a collective level within our soul space, within our psyche. So that's what closing the karma book means. Now, sometimes it can take lifetimes for a human being to open their Dharma book, even though the karma book is closed. Because we are so used to lifetimes after lifetimes after lifetimes to dig into the shit in order to figure out who we are. Can you recognize this? You know, we look at all of the mistakes and we look at all of the flaws and we look at all of the shortcomings and we look at all of the pain and we try to understand why the pain and how the pain, and we relive the pain, and we keep going in order to try to figure out, to learn how to get rid of the pain. Yeah? And so if we cannot wake up to the point where we actually recognize and realize that I'm done with the pain patterns, I actually don't need to repeat them in order to learn and in order to evolve. I don't need to repeat the pain patterns in order to evolve. I don't need to repeat the pain patterns in order to heal. That is in some ways nearly a foreign concept for us, because we are so used to healing happening through going into the pain one more time, going into the pain one more time, and then going into the pain another time to see if it's really gone or if it's more there to find that can help us. Yeah? This is very, very different in Dharma. When we open our Dharmic book, we are learning through opportunities instead of lessons. Some of the rules of Dharma is that Dharma will bring opportunities, free will to choose whether we want to engage with the opportunity or not. So when we are in karma, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. So when we are in karma, part of what happens in karma is that we have already determined what we have to come down to Grandmother Earth to resolve. We have a laundry list. Gotta say sorry to Jack, and hopefully we meet again, and gotta fix this pattern, and gotta do that, and gotta certainly pay back Mom, because this, that, and the other, and all of the indebtedness are being dealt with. So in karma, pretty much any lesson you meet, you must engage with in order to complete it. That's the rule of karma. You must engage with a lesson. In Dharma, it's nothing about lessons. There are no lessons. There are only opportunities to grow and learn. And the more we can learn through pleasure and knowledge, the more we get a hang of what Dharma is all about. So, Dharma is opportunities to grow and learn. Very, very different. You know, we because there's so many human beings who are closing the Karma book and opening the Dharma book, there's like thousands of human beings that are in complete bewilderment. What do I do with my life now? You know, what is the purpose of living? What is the purpose of continuing if it's not digging into the pain? So the learning is about figuring out, okay, how can I seek gains of self-worth, we call it in our tradition. Dharma becomes about seeking gains of self-worth, hunting for mirror reflections, experiences, skills, abilities, opportunities that helps us see how incredible, magnificent we are. and helps us see where we need to learn more, where we need to grow more, where we have opportunities to stretch more and deepen more in order to be more of who we are. So gains of self-worth is part of the key to living in Dharma. Seeking gains of self-worth. So the pattern that we have of constantly analyzing and figuring out where we were not measuring up and how we did not exactly do it right here and what has to be fixed and where we are flawed. Do you recognize this kind of obsessive hunt that we have been on? That's not seeking gains of self-worth. Can you see that? So seeking gains of self-worth is looking at completely different things in our environment. Is interacting with different things in our environment, and especially valuing different energetics in our environment. Valuing what worked, valuing what we did good, valuing what we learned in order to gain even more self-worth, in order to evolve even more. You see this? All right. Now, Dharma always brings like thousands of opportunities our way. That's the energetic of Dharma. Not lessons, but opportunities. Then there's another rule of Dharma, and that is that if you say yes to an opportunity, if you use your free will to say yes to an opportunity, then the Dharma Lord, so to say, says that you must complete that opportunity. You can fail in Dharma, but you should never quit. Because Dharma is not about whether you are successful or you're failing. Dharma is actually about how you are engaging in the opportunity. And so a key level in order to gain more self-worth is that we always have to complete our opportunity, take it into full and total completion. Let's say that means total defeat. You completely failed at something. If you stay to the completion and you give it your best and you make an attempt to engage in how you're going to choose to meet your life situational experiences versus what is happening and what he said and what she did and what went on, which is kind of the story and content of everything, that's not interesting in Dharma. What's interesting in Dharma is how you choose to meet it. Therefore, it's kind of irrelevant what is happening. Can you see how different this is? Because we are very, very caught up in what is happening, the content, versus in, if we take it from our reference point, how we are meeting it, how we are actually engaging. So you're on your way to Red Lodge, Dharma Intending evening, and your car breaks down. How are you going to meet that in a way that increases your self-worth, that makes you evolve, that has you love yourself and learn from your life experience and move on? Are we going to get completely bent out of shape at the effect in reaction to reality and see that our creation is against us and forces are against us? Or are we just going to take care of business, get back on the road, and keep going? That's the other rule of Dharma. So in Dharma, if you fail, in Dharma, when you come to completion and it's like a kind of a experience, a very challenging experience, you basically get off your butt, shake yourself off, clean your face, and brush your hair, so to say, and re-engage with life. Yeah? These are the rules of Dharma. A couple of other things that are rules of Dharma. You will, you see, the Dharma book is blank. The Karma book, we talk about the Dharma book and the Karma book in our tradition. And what we have chosen to write into this lifetime, we see being in a big book. It's like a symbolic book, you could say. And the Karma book has all this laundry list that I was talking about, that you must do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You just must, because otherwise you're not going to get your lesson. In Dharma, the book is completely blank. Every single page is totally blank. So there's nothing you must do at all. So the key is to find your motivation and inspiration, figuring out what is actually your heart desire. What makes you happy, healthy, hopeful, harmonious, and horny? What lights your fire? And therefore, that becomes what it is that you do, what inspires and motivates you. The Dharma book is blank because you are writing in it as you are walking in the moment. Dharmic pattern is completely unknown. It is happening as you are creating it with the thoughts that you are thinking, with the steps that you are taking, with the choices that you are making, each and every second. And that then becomes what unfolds. Are you familiar with having worked on your patterns for many, many, many years, and then you still have the same patterns? And so therefore we have this like idea that it takes a really long time to change pattern. Are you familiar with this idea? And you know, oh, not another pattern. I mean, it takes me so long to change the slightest little bit of pattern, and that this is like lifetime of experience of changing pattern that we have. So we know, yeah? We know, we have a lot of experience. You know, hundreds of lifetimes maybe, yeah? Well, Dharma patterns is created in the moment. So it has a lot to do with our awareness. Can we remain aware so that we do not recreate old things from our karma, but we actually create what inspires, motivates, and feeds us that is part of our natural self? Yeah? So after we have opened the Dharma book, the next step in the picture is called the death of the karmic ego. So the karmic ego gets super upset because it's been reigning for lifetimes, and it knows exactly what you have to do in order to figure out the lesson. And in order to figure out the wrong that you've done and make peace and negotiate and so on and so forth. The karmic ego has all the rules down. But it is full of what we call pretense. So pretense is belief systems, thought structures, ways of being that are not in alignment with creation, that are actually disconnected, but that we learn from our parents is good things. So we learn from our society, or we learn from our life experience that made us stay disconnected and in an illusion about reality. Do you understand the word pretense? See, the death of the karmic ego makes us shine the light into the ego and actually look and see what is real reality as it is and what is actually our projection onto the reality from either the past or the future. So, for example, I am a personality that is called in our tradition a do-gooder. A do-gooder loves to help other people, and in the dark, the do-gooder gets a lot of reaffirming feedback that they are okay the more that they help other people. So therefore, do-gooders tends to be rescuers. Yeah? There has been times and times and times again in my growth and learning where I will figure out that one of the energy experiences that I'm having where I'm losing energy when I'm giving to others, if ever I'm losing energy when I'm giving to others, I'm operating under a pretense. So my pretense usually is that I have to do this in order for others too. And it's never true. And it's incredibly confronting because it's the motivation of my very being. Can you see this? So any pretense that we have is the karmic ego's way of trying to get us to stay in the old way. Let's look at this one more time, Kristin. Are you sure that you are loving yourself now? What about this part of you that is really not worthwhile over here? You didn't do such a good job there, or you're not really that lovable because look at the partners that you're having, and you're not really happy in relationships, so you're pretty dysfunctional with this, that, and the other, or you're not having good orgasms, so da 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 da. That is the inner dialogue that is telling us all of the things that aren't up to par, that are basically our downfall. But it is food for the karmic ego. The karmic ego goes like, yeah, keep going. This is exactly what we want to happen. Get in there, get juicy with it, chew it up, kind of thing, yeah? That's the karmic ego. And it requires quite a bit of awareness, actually. Wake-up calls to see through the old way into reality. So part of the key to silencing pretender voices is to call them and say, no, that's not true. That's just my habitual way of evaluating myself. I've done that my whole lifetime. And does it ever lead me anywhere good? No. It only leads me into feeling kind of like unfit for the task and burdened by life and unsuccessful and insecure and all of these things. And the karmic ego always leads us there. The karmic ego always waits until tomorrow to take the opportunities today. Opportunity come your way, Dharma opportunity. Do you want to take it or not? Choose, yes, no. No, I don't really know for sure. Let's stop life a little bit and sit and think about it. Because, my thinking, after all, is very karmic, but I've done this for hundreds of years already, so I'm going to have to think about it. Opportunities goes by, and that's it. Now, we can only experience the same cycle that karma gave us. So if you are in an experience in your life where you feel you did something to change a pattern, but then you are back at the same place again, mysteriously. In the shitter, feeling horrible, insecure, or whatever it is, yeah? That means that the pattern didn't change. So in Dharma, you just go, all right, okay, what's next? I'm going to engage again. I'm going to find my way. I know that the way it was not that way. Must be another way. It's not usually going to come from what you know already. That's the other thing with Dharma patterns. Solutions doesn't usually come from what we know already. It comes through spontaneity, exhibitionism, and voyeurism. It comes through taking charge of our sexual energy and know that we are interconnected with creation and finding a way to be natural and be spontaneous, dare to step out of the known. Dharma happens in the unknown. Yeah? All right. So in this time period with the death of the karmic ego, usually first we are able to silence the inner dialogue that goes blah, 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 and she did this and he did that, blah, 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 that kind of thing. We are able to silence that, and then what we have to start hunting for is what we call the forgetter. Because the second level of the pretender reality and the karmic ego is the one that just forgets. I forgot to do my sacred platform this morning. I just forgot. I mean, I was really intentional and wanted to do this discipline. And I just forgot about it. Wow. Funny how that happens. That is also the karmic ego. The karmic ego forgets to do all of the things that you know are really good for you, but that you may have a little bit resistance with, or that may require some extra energy, that may take you out of the beaten path onto a pioneer journey within yourself. All of those energetics, who forgets is the karmic ego. So for you to invest energy into any kind of discipline is going to win over your karmic ego. If anyone, how many of you are doing a discipline regularly? Great. So if you do discipline, it doesn't matter what you do. It just matters, actually. I mean, it's great if you can do something that also increases your energy, that also makes you happy, that also makes you really feeling good and all of that. Of course, because you are seeking self-worth and loving yourself. But really, when we come down to it, what matters is that the karmic ego dies, that you win. That you can do something that you actually just say, I'm going to do this. Your word gets reinstated as integrous with yourself. When that happens, the karmic ego dies. Does that make sense? And every time you've done that, you have brought death to the karmic ego. Your will, your nature, your spirit, your desire, your intent won. And the old way and the itty-bitty shitty committee, so to speak, lost. Yeah? All right. Any questions so far? Does it make sense? Yeah.
So I got two questions. One is, so each of these steps is not a clear beginning and total finish.
Correct. Good.
All these steps are present, available all the time.
Correct.
The next step starts getting stronger.
Correct.
And you stuff up in shitter, I think was your term.
Not a very good term. Yeah, so that's a very good point, David. Basically, in many ways, all the steps are present at the same time. And you can find yourself that if you take one step in bringing death to the karmic ego, all of a sudden you can be more in your commander, which is the next step. The birth of the Dharma ego is our commander. It's the one that says, I'm in charge, and I have gained the right to be in charge, and I have the strength to be in charge, and this is where I'm going. And nothing can stop me. I am taking my ship back to the mothership. I am uniting with the everything because I'm a cell within great spirit. I am totally connected. And all of us have experienced that when we can silence the pretender voices and bring death to the karmic ego, this whole other dimension opens up in our psyche. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. But it comes to a certain point very often after step number 6 or step number 5 where you have to actually, you can't be having the karmic ego making any decisions any longer. So one of the things to make sure you don't go back to step number 3 is that you say, my karmic ego does not get to make any decision that impacts my design. So my karmic ego could get to eat a chocolate bar, but it's not going to say, no, you're not going to go to Australia because you're too tired or something. You see what I'm saying? So it's not going to get to decide things that really matters in my evolution. The karmic ego gets demoted, and it gets to kind of play off in certain spaces and arenas that really doesn't make a huge impact on your character. We have something that we call the basic self in the psyche of our being. The basic self will always choose the least pain or the most pleasure. It's a very basic kind of hindbrain part of ourself. So the basic self in a bad situation is going to choose the least painful. So you can imagine when we're changing and transforming and we want to have the karmic ego die, the basic self are going to try to choose like the least of the death because the deaths are too difficult and too much transformation and so on. So when we go through these steps of the death of the karmic ego and the birth of the Dharma ego, we start to learn about ourselves and we start to see, oh my God, I have this part of myself that needs to be fed. So our teacher always says, he always feeds his basic self with, if you do this, you're going to get to see a movie tonight. Or if you do this, then we're going to get to do this. Or if we do this, if you do the discipline today, then I'm going to get to do this. And so you have to learn about yourself. What is it that actually motivates and inspires you, so that this basic self that tends to only choose what is instantaneously gratifying as pleasure, it doesn't have a long-term view or anything like that, and it's going to choose instantaneously the least pain, how could you get around that part of yourself? And say, all right, I'm going to get you on board, we're going to become buddies, and I'm going to promise myself that I'm going to get to have this and this if I go here. Does this make sense? Do you know this basic self part of yourself? Yeah?
So how you're explaining it, what I think I see is that it doesn't actually die and it goes away.
Correct.
You sort of get more in command of it and more able to manage it in your life.
Correct. But it is no longer making any decisions. So when you are making choices and decisions on your path, on your journey towards enlightenment and evolution and happiness and pleasure, your karmic ego, your old patterns of suffering, doesn't get to make any choices about whether you're going to say yes to an opportunity or no to an opportunity. That is when the karmic ego dies. Yeah.
How do I know, for example, what is the karmic ego position, and what is something that I know that is good for my
It's very, very good question. Very good question. So there's a couple of things that you can know, and the handout that I'm going to give out afterwards also gives you some ranges of that. Basically, if you gain energy, if you gain awareness, you become brighter, stronger, more aware, more healthy, more happy, over a period of time engaging with an activity, you know that it's supporting your Dharma. It's probably more of a commander energy. If you get drained and tired and unmotivated and over a longer period of time, every time you do this energetic, then it's usually a pretender reality. So we know, for example, I can sit and go, oh, I don't want to do my da-da-da-da, oh, well, I do my da-da-da tomorrow, and I do it that, and no. I have lots of resistance, which could mean I obviously don't want to do this. But then I go and do it, and I feel like, bam! I feel totally energized and so on. Well, I know that, okay, it was good for me to do that, and this thing that I was doing beforehand was pure entertainment of my karmic ego, yeah? And it becomes really obvious. And it's incredibly good if you can call it with humor, if you can kind of dangle it in front of yourself and say, oh, yeah, okay. I know what that was. Shine the light on it. Make it aware. Make it part of your consciousness versus part of your shadow. Yeah? All right. The birth of the Dharma ego, how are we doing? Woo. The birth of the Dharma ego has to do with getting completely in command. The commander self, we call it the commander ego. And so part of what your question was asking is exemplifying this learning that we have to go through in our psyche, where we know and start listening to our inner knowing, our higher self, our original being, our soul space. You can call it many things. And that this part of our soul space, our higher self, our original being, becomes strong within us, so that we actually start knowing when it's saying yes, or when it's saying go, or when it's saying no, this part of our inner knowing, we have faith in it and we start following it, and it's leading us onto the right path. That is part of the commander Dharma ego. The Dharma ego is also step number 4, and in our tradition, step number 4 has to do with absolute total determination, full throttle. And part of what we learn here is the will to do and the willingness to engage. So rather than running around wasting time on resistances and all these different other things we do, distractions and so on, we learn to hone our life force. And it becomes this like, I have the will to do and the willingness to engage. And the faster I can engage on what I know is right, what comes from heaven, or what comes from my higher self, or what comes from my being, from my naturalness, the faster I grow, the more happier I become, the healthier I am. Have you noticed this? If you take action on what you know has come to you in ceremony, has come to you in meditation, has come to you when you're washing your hair in the shower, when you're having sex, inspirations come through. And you know they are true. If you take action on them and bring them into your life, boom, evolution starts happening with ease. It is no longer hardship to evolve. You see, part of karma growing is all about the hardship to evolve and the pain of healing. Dharma growing is pleasure and knowledge, like blissful, ecstatic pleasure as we are growing. And not avoiding the painful experiences in life. You know, we have heartaches, we have sadness, we have grief, we bump our foot, we have pain, but that doesn't mean that we stop being ecstatic, that we stop being engaging, that we stop being spontaneous. That makes sense? All right. So, I want to give you some time to work with a little sheet that I have, so you can actually take this talk into your own psyche a little bit and answer some questions for yourself and see if we can maybe walk out of here with something tangible. Yeah? So that's the birth of the Dharma Ego, total and complete determination and liberation. You are no longer forgetting. Yeah? And you have many areas in your life where you have done this. There's many spaces where you just do what you know you need to do and there's not a question about it. And you are that being and that person now. You're no longer the one who had difficulty with it. You know this place? Yeah. Now the awakening and the birth of the natural self is what our teacher says, Thunderstrike says, that this is the place that we are collectively. So the collective of human beings are at place as step number 5 in the Dharmic Intending. So the awakening or birth of our natural self. This is a very, very mature space that actually all of us carry when we are willing to acknowledge ourselves for who we are and just let go of the old way and be. Spontaneously reveal our emotions, open our space, have co-empowered interaction with other human beings, be willing to confront, be willing to put our foot down when things isn't sitting right, be willing to engage in the moment with everything that needs to happen. That is part of the awakening and the birth of the natural self. It is basically the place where we learn to step out of codependent relationships to other human beings. So we stop codependency and we step into full co-empowerment. We take responsibility for co-empowerment. It's actually not very, very easy. So we don't let any loose ends of contamination, upset, and anger sit in a relationship, for example. We do everything we can to sort it out and go to war, in many ways, against what is creating the darkness in us. You see, many elders speak that this time is not a time for weaklings. This time is a time for spiritual warriors that is willing to surf the waves of chaos. Because if we look at our economy, if we look at what's happening politically, if we look at all of the things, the weather and everything that is going on in our time today, it's quite chaotic. Would you agree? So part of learning how to thrive and be fulfilled and take advantage of what's happening in our world today is to learn to be more chaotic in the way we flow, to be less fixed, to be much more fluid. And that's the awakening and birth of the natural self. We start acting out of character, for example. We don't act the same way that Kristin has acted all of her life. I dare to be in self-expression. We call it the development of the magical, mysterious character. The magical, mysterious character are like 1,000 facets of who we are as a being that we are willing to start expressing. What I would love to see if we could do together is if we could get an understanding of what's on this little piece of paper, then take a look at some of the things there and really apply them to your life. Apply some of these questions. You see, the first one's going to have to do with, here are some suggested criteria to apply in Dharma when choosing between multiple opportunities. So in order for you to know that an opportunity is going to be dharmic for you, it must always increase your stability and link to the source of the force of your path with heart, whichever your path with our heart has to do with how you grow, how you evolve, and so on. It must increase your evolution. That it will demand of you a higher level of authority, responsibility, etc. So those are all criteria that you're going to see which one are you going to use in order to figure out which opportunity to say yes to and which opportunities to say no to. Is that clear? Then underneath, there's another principle of Dharma, and that is that in Dharma, the key element is productive and procreative patterns. In Karma, we have reproductive patterns. Reproductive patterns means that we're just repeating what we've learned. We're repeating what we have put in place, and the pattern is going over and over and over with small refinements. But basically, it's the same thing. You're doing the same thing as your parent did, and they are doing the same that their parents did, and we just kind of keep repeating it. In Dharma, it's all about being productive. So one of the challenges that people have is learning what is a productive pattern? What is a dharmic pattern? And on this sheet of paper, it gives you the ideas of what does a non-productive pattern look like, and what does a productive pattern look like. And I would like you to take a moment, like 10 minutes maybe, and just take a look and sit with a person, like turn to a person to one of your left or your right side, and actually discuss it a little bit. And say, okay, this is what I see that I want to do with this in my life, and this pattern here is clearly karmic, and I'm going to turn it around and make it dharmic by following these principles. And this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. Are you following me?